Hey guys, it's Courtney and I'm back with another video. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of no line coloring with my Copic markers, and I'm using the Hey Pumpkin stamp set by Honeybee Stamps. I know, surprising using another Honeybee stamp set. I am going to be stamping on a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. This is cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm bringing out my MISTI here. This is a pretty large image, and I'm going to stamp it twice with Barely Beige ink by Simon Says Stamp. This is a super light ink. It's perfect for no line coloring and also no line watercoloring as well, because it is waterproof as well. I usually would normally stamp this just once for no line coloring, but I am stamping it twice just so that you guys have a better chance of seeing the lines a little bit better on camera. Once my image was stamped out, I didn't stamp any other of the images from the stamp set. This pretty much is your scene, no masking involved or anything like that. I went ahead and removed that from my MISTI, and I'm going to use some Distress inks just for the sky to give that a little bit of color. I'm going to be using Tumbled Glass and Faded Jeans, and this is regular Distress inks here. I'm not doing any masking. I'm starting off with my Tumbled Glass and working from the top part of the panel down, and then I'll go in with my Faded Jeans and just add a little bit of the darker color right there to the top, and then go back in with my Tumbled Glass to blend that out. Now I'm going directly over my image. It is fading to white pretty much, but I figured I can color directly over it. However, I didn't realize that I took my ink blending tool that I normally use for oxides, tumbled glass, but tumbled glass oxide, and that has a little bit of a different finish than regular Distress inks. I wouldn't normally color directly over them. So there were a few little areas because of the Distress oxide inks that I had on that foam pad. Some of the areas did get a little bit muddy. So moving on to the coloring, I did go ahead and speed this up by quite a bit. This took me a while. So I'm starting off with her skin, starting off with my lightest color, laying out my darkest areas, went in with my E04 and just put the shadows underneath where her bangs are hanging over her face and where her hair is hanging over her face on the side, blending that out with my E11, then my E00, and then back to my E50 and blending the rest of that out. I took a EK Success journaling pen just to add her little eyes and mouth back in. You kind of lose that because the ink is so light. I did use the packaging of the stamp to kind of see where her eyes and her mouth were, just because they were very, very difficult to see. Next, I will move on to her hair, and I'm going to use my E50 markers here. Now, I'll let you guys know, I'm not an expert with no line coloring. I'm very new at it. I've only really tried it 2 or 3 times, so I'm probably not the best person to teach somebody how to do this, but I figured I'm still learning and you guys can learn along with me. I am starting off with my darkest color, the E59. My darkest areas will be where her hair is parted and also where her bangs are kind of laying over or under the rest of her hair. I wanted to add a few highlights throughout her hair, so I'm adding some darker areas right there in the center and then on the tips of her hair. Now on the right hand side, there is a strand of hair that's kind of laying over the bottom part of her hair. So I did create a shadow there just to differentiate between the two pieces of hair. Next, I'll go in with my E57 and just blend those flicks out a little bit and my little shadow there that I created. Next, I'll go in with my E55 and extend those flicks out even further, almost to the very end. I'm just leaving a little bit of a highlight here, and I'll be using my E53 for that. And you'll see as I color the rest of the card, I go back to her hair a few times just because I wasn't completely happy with it. This is one of the areas where I had a little bit of that Distress Oxide ink, so I was getting a little bit of that muddy look to it. So I did go back a few times and fix up some of those areas. Next, we will move on to the pumpkin. And I'm starting off with what originally was going to be my lightest color. This is a Y38, and I'm just laying down my darkest areas. So where the pumpkin is kind of indented, I don't know what that would be called, but the way the pumpkin is shaped, I'm just laying a line of my lightest color there, and my shadow areas will be on the bottom and the top of the pumpkin. Because this is a round object, I wanted to make sure that I kept my highlight in the center, and this will kind of just give me a guide as far as where I need my shadows to be. She would also create a shadow on the pumpkin, so I am laying a line there of my light color too. Next, I'll move on to my darkest color, which is actually an E marker. This is the E09. It's more of a reddish, brownish, orangish color. And I'm just barely touching the tip of my marker to the paper and going over those lines in the center of the pumpkin. Then I will start my flicking from the base as well as the top of the pumpkin. And I'm not going very far up here. This is a really, really dark color. And like I said, it's not orange. And I wanted my pumpkin to still appear to be orange. So I'm not even adding this onto the shadow for her. I'm going to use my darkest midtone, which is the YR18. And that's when I'll create my shadow that she creates. And I'll go over these lines and extend those out a little bit, as well as my flicks from the bottom and the top. Next, I'll go in with my next midtone color, which is the YR68, and basically doing the same exact thing, extending those shadows out where those lines are, as well as the flicks on the bottom and the top. And this is curved on either side because it is a round object. So you want to make sure that your flicks are following the direction of the object. You don't want to do them straight down off to the side. You want to make them a little bit curved. Next, I'll go in with that Y38, which was originally going to be my lightest color, but I wanted more of a highlight right there in the center. So once I had that Y38 down, I ended up bringing in my Y35, which is just a little bit lighter. It's more of a yellow, but I'm just using this in the highlight area and filling in just the center of the pumpkin. I used my YR18 marker, which was the darkest midtone, just to go along the base of the pumpkin. My flicks kind of, I lost the line, the outline of the pumpkin when I started my flicking, so I just darkened those up a little bit. For the stem, I'm going to use my YG90 markers. My darkest area will be on the base of the stem, and extending that out with my midtone and then back to my lightest color. Next, we will move on to her little jeans here. We're making them blue jeans. And the B90 markers are great anytime you want to color jeans. So again, starting with my lightest color and laying out my darkest areas, which will be basically on the bottom and where her little knees are. Extending that out with my B95 and then going back in with my B91 and blending all of that out. For her little cat, I think this is supposed to be a cat. I'm coloring it as if it's a cat. We're going to be coloring this gray. So I'm using my warm grays here, and I'm going right in with my darkest color, which is the W5. And I'm just laying out my darkest areas. I'm just putting a little bit of shading off to the left-hand side and where his little face is hanging over the rest of his body and where his tail is kind of curved up there. Next, I'll go in with my W3 and extend those out a little bit further. And then finally with my W1 and filling in that entire cat. And again, I'll use my EK Success journaling pen just to add his little face back in. He has little eyes on the image. There's little eyes and little eyebrows, I guess, and the little nose and mouth. I went in with my R20 just to add a little bit of color to the inside of his ears and his little nose. Next, we'll move on to this little girl's shirt. And I decided to color her shirt purple. Because this is a fall themed card, I didn't want to use fall colors for her shirt just because I didn't want her to blend in with the background. So I'm starting with my lightest color as usual, adding the shading underneath her little shirt sleeve there where the cat is laying on her and her little collar there, blending that out with my mid-tone and then back to my lightest color. I wasn't getting a good blend here. I was getting really harsh lines. So I did go back in with my mid-tone, which is the V15, and extended those shadow areas out a little bit and then go back in with my lightest color, and I got a much better blend this time. I took my white gel pen and just added her little buttons back in. And then we will move on to the tree trunks in the back. I'm starting with my E31 here and basically just filling them in. I'm not worried about the branches. Those are going to be covered up. Next, I went in with my E37 and just added a little bit of shading off to the left-hand side and to some of those little longer branches that I did color in just to give it a little bit of dimension. I'm not worried about a light source or anything. Next, I moved on to the E33, blended that out a little bit further, and then finally back with the E31 and basically just covered up the entire area again. This is where I realized I forgot to color her little shoes, and I had my warm gray marker still on my desk from coloring the cat, so I am grabbing those again, only I'm going to go a little bit darker than the cat and start with the W7, which is nearly black. I'm just adding my shading off to the right hand side where that one shoe is kind of hanging over the other, blending that out with my W5 and then to my W3. Now for these little trees, I know there's a lot of branches within the image, but we're ignoring those. I took out a variety of YR markers and Y markers and an R marker, and I'm just doing dots all over the place in the shape of the tree. Started with that YR27, now I'll go in with my YR24 and just doing the same exact thing. With my Y17, this will lighten everything up a little bit because naturally it's a lighter color. I went in with a red, but I used this a little bit more sparingly just because I didn't want it to kind of overshadow the rest of the colors, being it was such a dark color. And I wanted to add just a little bit more of that YR24 and kind of lighten up that red a little bit. And I did end up going in with my YR16 just to brighten everything up just a little bit more. Next, we'll move on to the grass, and I'm starting with my G21, which you can see splattered when I open the cap, so I just took my colorless blender there. And I'm going over the lines of the stamp where it doesn't extend all the way to the end of the card panel, so I just extended that myself. I covered up the entire bottom part of that card with the G21. Next, I'll go in with the G46, and I'm just adding some shading underneath the little tree trunks and underneath the pumpkin where that would be casting a shadow. Again, no light source, so I'm just putting it right there in the center. Next, for my G24, I'm extending that shadow out a little bit further underneath the pumpkin and the little tree trunks. Then I added a few little blades of grass. Now, most of these are going to get blended out, so it's not going to be as noticeable, but it does give a little texture to the ground. Last, I went back with my G21 and again filled in that entire area, and that will help blend everything together. Once my coloring was done, I noticed that somehow I got red right there on my little grassy area. So I took my colorless blender and took that away and just let it dry while I stamped my sentiment, and I'm stamping with VersaFine Onyx Black ink for that little grassy area where we use the colorless blender, I'll just go back in with my G21 and cover up that little area where I'm totally missing color now. Last, I took my white gel pen and just added a few little reflections to the pumpkin itself and adhered this panel to an A2 size card base. That's it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.